Hello and welcome. So, today we are going to be studying the next chapter, that is evolution. It is from class 12's biology. So, this is the syllabus that has been specified by ISC. I have modified the syllabus just to make the studying and learning procedure better. So, that's why there are some new words also, that is population genetics and all these words. It may not be there directly in your syllabus, but it's better to know about it, the names of the studies that we are studying about. Alright, so it is good to know, that's why we have kept it like this. So I have made this syllabus in a little modified way, and there are some new extra things which may not be which is not there in this syllabus, but again questions have come from these portions in the previous years, so they can give questions from this portion. That's why it has been included in this lecture. Now the first topic is the origin of life. Now, to understand evolution, when we talk about evolution, we talk about the evolution of life on earth. So let's see how the life originated. Now, to understand how the life originated, we need to know how earth originated. But again, to know how the earth originated, we need to know how universe originated. So around 20 billion years ago, there was a structure like this, an atomic structure which had a very high density, very high density, very high energy, high mass, and very small, infinitesimal small structure it was. Now at one point of time, that structure started expanding after a blast. Okay, so there was an explosion, and after that explosion, this particular structure started expanding, and it formed a nebula of clouds. Means basically it was just a cloud of dust particles. This cloud of dust particles started clumping together in some portions, and this clumps ultimately gave rise to the different galaxies, and in the galaxies there were further clumpings, and in those clumpings finally it gave rise to the sun, stars, and the earth and the other planets, obviously. Now there is a huge story behind it. It's not that suddenly the substances started accumulating. Obviously there was a gravitational pull and all that. There was also the hydrogen and helium nuclear fusion reaction that was going on. But here we are going to just see the origin in a very brief way, so that we understand how Earth originated. So we can see there was a clumping of the substances. The heaviest substances started accumulating in the middle, and the lighter was outside, and together this structure was formed, which was known as the Earth. Now further we went forward, like it was 4.5 billion years ago the Earth originated. So around 4 billion years ago the first life came to Earth. Now to understand how the life came to Earth, we have a question, that how can the first cell arise if there is no pre-existing cell? Because according to the cell theory, it states, the third point of the cell theory given by Rudolf Virchow, that every life, or every cell rather, should have a pre-existing cell. So the first cellular organism which first arisen, it should be arising from another cell. So which is that another cell? So here comes our question, and so to understand that, we have to study the origin of life in further details. So there are different views on this origin of life. Now before I go into this, I'll just tell you these two things. Now what does this mean? Abiogenesis and biogenesis. Now the term abiogenesis is for abiotic factors. Abiotic factors are those non-living structures. Alright. So abiogenesis means formation. So it is telling us that it is generation of life from non-living matter. So according to abiogenesis, it says that life first originated in non-living material. In non-living material, life can originate. So it simply means that if there is a piece of meat lying somewhere, say it's a container and here there is a piece of meat lying, suddenly after few days we can see small maggots on it. Now where is this small maggots coming from? So a group of scientists argued that from the meat itself the maggots arose. But then there were other group of scientists who gave a logical reason that no, it was not the meat from which the maggots have arisen. There were small flies that were moving around which sat on this meat and it laid its egg over there, and the eggs actually gave rise to the maggots. So it is not the meat which gave rise to the maggots. Basically it is the mother flies gave rise to the small baby maggots rather. So this abiogenesis was fully and finally dissolved. It was not accepted and it was thrown off. It was just discarded by some scientists. The very most important name is Pasteur. Louis Pasteur. He did a swan lake experiment, and from his swan lake experiment he proved a very important theory called the biogenesis. Though it is not a very important theory, important experiments, but it is fun to know about it. Now there were scientists who were trying to prove that the maggots that arose in the meat was actually because of the flies. So what they did was they just closed this structure. They closed this structure and they didn't let any air come in. So the other scientists argued that maybe there is no air coming in. So fine, then there is no other way, we have to let the air also to come in. So if I let the air come in, obviously the flies are coming over here laying their eggs. And if I close this thing with a tight lid, so that air does not come in, so the flies don't come, fine, and finally the maggots also don't arise. But again the air is not coming in, so there is a loophole over there. So there were many series of experiments. The final experiment was given by the swan lake experiment by Louis Pasteur. He said that his swan lake flask looked like this. So in this he kept some broth. Broth is a nutrient media, means it is going to be having some nutrients in it, and it can easily grow microorganisms or any organism. So whichever this nutrients suitable for, they can grow any kind of cells. So this was suitable for the growth of microbes. So he kept it like that. He boiled this thing and sterilized this whole substance that was there, the broth, so that there was no microorganisms from previous one. Now he kept it for some time and he saw that there was no microbes coming over here. It was open like this. So here from this swan lake the oxygen can come in, fine, but then he found that there was no microbes over here. There was no microbes growing in this broth. Now he again did he went further. He broke this neck. Either he can break this neck or you can just tilt it in any case. So it is just he broke this neck, and then it looked something like this. So if the neck is broken, it looks like this. Now he boiled it again and he kept it like that, and he saw that there were microbes growing on it. So there were microbes started growing on it. So here he proved, because of the swan neck that was there, the microbes were coming inside and was getting attached to this portion and couldn't reach this thing. It couldn't reach the broth. Whereas if it was broken, the microbes easily reached the broth. So that's how he proved that life can originate only when there is a previous life, or life can originate only when there is a previous cell. Basically, one cell can only give rise to another cell. So that is how he proved that life arises from pre-existing life, which we can see in our present atmosphere. So abiogenesis is impossible. But then again the question remained the same. How did the first cell arise? Now, to understand that, there was again another experiment. Now that experiment was done by scientists Miller and Urey, and the experiment was called a Miller-Urey experiment. This experiment was based on a theory given by these people, Oparin and Haldane. Now what they did, they gave some postulates. These are the postulates. Now all this notes that is there, it is enough for your ISC. You can even copy it down if you want. So I'll just explain it. Now, according to them, spontaneous generation of life, that is nothing but the abiogenesis, that is life originating from non-living components, has happened. But it has happened in the primitive atmosphere and it is not possible in the present day. Why? Because the primitive atmosphere was a reducing atmosphere, whereas the present atmosphere is an oxidizing atmosphere. Now reducing means it has hydrogen gas, and present atmosphere has oxygen gas in our earth. So that is the first thing, reducing atmosphere. Also the primitive atmosphere had very high temperature. There was continuous lightning, intense UV radiation, because actually there was nothing called the ozone layer. No oxygen means no ozone layer. So no ozone layer to protect us from direct sun rays, direct UV rays. So there were direct UV rays coming to the Earth's atmosphere. Now all these things together actually helped in the abiogenetic origin of life, that is spontaneous generation of life. Means life first originated from non-living matter. But then what kind of non-living matter? So again the experiment started. So we have to know that what kind of non-living matter was present that time in the atmosphere. So in the atmosphere that time, the non-living components that was present was this gases, that is methane, ammonia, water and hydrogen. So for first living organisms arised from simple inorganic and organic compounds. How this happened? So it was, this whole theory was actually proved by Miller and Urey. What they did, this is their apparatus. It is known as a spark discharge apparatus. They basically simulated the primitive atmosphere in the present day laboratory. Simulation means they have just copied the primitive atmosphere. They just simply copied it. Okay, they copied it. What they did was they made this kind of apparatus. Here in this structure, in this round structure, if you see, in this round structure they actually put all these gases. So you can see over here all the gases that are there. Now in these gases, I'll just show it with a pointer. So in this, here all the gases were there. Here there was a boiling water which was similar to the primitive atmosphere's water, because in the primitive atmosphere it was continuously raining, but the rain was evaporated because the temperature was very high. Direct sun rays were coming to us. So obviously temperature was very high. So literally the water was boiling. So this is the boiling water which represents the ocean. And here this represents the atmosphere. So the boiling water or the steam is going to be coming over here and it was accumulating over here. So it had methane, ammonia, water and hydrogen. This were the things that was there in this structure. Now there were also electrodes. They attached this to electrodes to simulate the continuous lightning discharge that was happening in the primitive atmosphere. They did this experiment and they found that the electricity provided some kind of energy to do some reaction. Now what is the reaction? It is not yet known in details, but there was a kind of reaction which resulted in this inorganic compounds turning into organic molecules. Now these were the different organic molecules that were formed. Now aspartic acid, glutamic acid, glycine, alanine, all these are amino acids. And amino acids is the basic structure of proteins. So if amino acids are being formed, then there is a good chance that they can come together and form the proteins. So these were the first organic molecules that was formed from this inorganic molecules, the small inorganic molecules. They even tried to cool down this thing so that the condensed water can be easily collected over here and can be tasted for the different molecules that is found. So this is the simulating experiment that was done by them, and this was the different molecules that were formed, and which proved that if inorganic molecules can give rise to organic molecules like this, then there is a good chance that this organic molecules can give rise to the next structure, that is the protein. So that we are going to be studying in our next class. So this is the Miller-Urey experiment given by just the Miller-Urey experiment. One more thing, that Miller-Urey experiment said that these molecules were condensing together and was forming this. So there was further polymerization reaction which was resulting into the further bigger macromolecules. So this was the fourth point also that they give. Okay, that there was a progressive biochemical reaction by polymerization, and the process of transmission of non-living chemicals into living matter extended over 1 billion years. This is just a time period. So that is what is the meaning of, that is what is the Miller-Urey experiment states. So the Miller-Urey simply proved Oppen-Halden's theory of this first step. This first step that was there, that is production of simple organic molecules from simple inorganic molecules. These are simple inorganic molecules. From here we are getting simple organic molecules. Now from this simple organic molecules, in the presence of heat, they can come together and form complex organic molecules. So these were the different theories given by different scientists. So we'll go into details about this in the next class. So One more thing about the primitive atmosphere, the oxygen. The oxygen in the primitive atmosphere was very much important because in the primitive atmosphere oxygen was not present at all. In the present atmosphere, since oxygen is present, we have some kind of organisms. We have many living organisms. We know these living organisms can degrade even the organic molecules also. So if a dead body is buried, it can easily be degraded out by the microorganisms. So obviously, if there is any kind of organic molecule, they can easily degrade them into smaller particles. So those molecules, if these molecules starts forming, if this kind of molecule starts forming now in the oxidizing atmosphere of the earth, it is impossible that it won't be possible that it will be staying there, because these organisms are going to be degrading them. Also, we have a ozone layer now because of oxygen. So this ozone layer won't let the earth's atmosphere to increase so much that it can give rise to the complex organic compounds. Also, this oxidizing atmosphere helps in the respiration and production of energy by the different organisms. So oxygen in the present day is very important, but in the primitive atmosphere oxygen was not required, because if oxygen would have been present, the first life wouldn't have come on the earth. So the first life to come on the earth, the first cells to arise, it has to be a reducing atmosphere. So the final proof that opponent Haldan's theory was right, that abiogenesis was possible in the primitive atmosphere, but in the present day atmosphere it is not. So that's all. Thank you.